Hello and welcome to the Breeders' Cup webinar with Brad Free and possibly with Peter Thomas Fornatel calling in from Lexington, Kentucky. Pete's not on quite yet, but hopefully will be joining soon. Brad is on. Brad, of course, is the Daily Racing Form handicapper for Southern California. Welcome, Brad.
Good morning, Mike, and happy to join the webinar this morning, talk about Breeders' Cup, including some big news right at the top of the show.
Yes, you mentioned it. It just broke, so I'll let you let everybody know that hasn't heard maybe probably the biggest news we've heard in the week leading up to the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, this is huge. The Breeders' Cup Classic has lost a key contender. The 5-year-old mare Beholder, trying to become the second fillier mare to win the Breeders' Cup Classic after Zenyatta, will be scratched from the Breeders' Cup Classic. Trainer Richard Mandella announced that just a few minutes ago. Apparently she bled after training this morning, and Beholder will scratch from the Breeders' Cup Classic on Saturday. That's a key defection. Many people, myself included, figured she would be the main competition for the morning line favorite American Pharoah, who's trying to end his career with a win in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Of course, he became the first Triple Crown winner in 37 years. Now the question is, who gives American Pharoah a battle? With Beholder out of the race, who goes with American Pharoah? I don't think anybody was going to go with him anyway, but I'm not even sure who's going to sit second behind him. American Pharoah's task to end his career with a win in the Breeders' Cup Classic just got a whole lot easier with the scratch of Beholder.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And obviously, we'll go through not just that race, but all of the Breeders' Cup races that you want to discuss, Brad, with an eye to who you're looking to play, or perhaps who you're looking to play against at short prices. That's the whole goal of this webinar and the focus of the webinar. And in addition to that, we have the ability for users and listeners to ask questions. You can submit your questions through the webinar chat screen in the upper right-hand portion of your screen. They'll be passed through, and many of them will, of course, be answered, I would imagine, organically as we discuss some of the races, but I'll also chime in with any that seem particularly relevant or pertinent that maybe we haven't covered. So I'm going to jump over to first, before I jump into Formulator to show the races, I'm going to mention that this is the penultimate webinar for the Breeders' Cup week. We have one more this afternoon with Marcus Hirsch talking about the European horses that are set to race in all of the Breeders' Cup races. So be sure and sign up for that one if you haven't yet. You go to drf.com/webinars to see, not only register for that, but to see recaps of all the ones that we've had earlier in this week. But what I'm going to do now, Brad, is I'm going to just jump to Formulator for the race cards. It's you're learning of this news at the same time I'm learning of this news at the same time. Many listening, I'm sure, are hearing about Beholder scratching from the Breeders' Cup Classic. So when we get to that race, we'll obviously go through, and as you mentioned, it's hard to even imagine who might sit second now that she's out. We can even kind of do some handicapping on the fly, pace handicapping on the fly, to try and figure out maybe what the new pace scenario might be for the Classic.
Yeah, that sounds good, and that'll be the last race that we talk about. The Breeders' Cup Classic lost a key element this morning with the scratch of Beholder, making American Pharoah's task a whole lot easier.
Right. Well, we'll get there in enough time, but before we get there, we've got 4 Breeders' Cup races tomorrow, and then a total of 9 on Saturday. And I don't know if we want to necessarily cover all of them. It's up to you. If you have something briefly to say on each, we can go through one by one, or if there's certain races where you just you want to focus more heavily in terms of the discussion, we can just jump straight to those.
Yeah, I'd like to go through all of them, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on many of them, including the very first one that we're going to talk about. The first Breeders' Cup race on Friday is race number 6, and it's the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. And, you know, Simric drew poorly way out in post 13, but in my opinion, I think he's just the best horse in the field. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf historically has been dominated by Europeans. The last 4 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf winners prepped overseas. 6 of the 7 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf winners prepped outside the United States of America. So Simric, a runner-up in a Group 1 last time out in France, trained by John Gosden. Gosden won this race in '08 with Donna Tebum and '09 with Pounced, and he's back with a very good U.S. bred, Kentucky-bred son of Kitten's Joy. The post position did not work in his favor, Simric, but I think he's good enough to overcome the draw. He's the 7-2 favorite on the morning line. I have nothing but respect for the second choice, number 8, Arrow Force, trained by Mark Cassidy. This is a race that I'm just interested to watch as a fan. I'm not going to bet on Simric at 7-2, but I would expect that the trend toward European winners to continue. There is a long shot in here that I'm going to be taking a close look at on the track and on the board, and that's number 4, Shogun, who was no match for Simric last time out. But he adds blinkers, he's getting Lasix, and he might be the price play coming into the U.S., trained by Aidan O'Brien. So Shogun at 12-1, he's worth consideration, I guess. But I think the top 2 favorites in the race are the legitimate favorites despite the draw, 13 Simric and number 8 Arrow Force.
All right, you mentioned Shogun finishing behind Simric last out, but getting the addition of Lasix, which Simric will not be running on tomorrow. I actually took a look at Breeders' Cup history going back to 2008. That's the last time, with 2012 and 13 as the exception, since the 2-year-olds none of the 2-year-olds ran on Lasix those years. If you look beyond those years, the last time we had a Breeders' Cup turf winner win without Lasix was 2008 with both Gold Lakova and Conduit winning. They actually both repeated next year. Both times they were using Lasix in 2009 when they had repeat wins. Since then we haven't had, I think the Europeans are 0 for 26 without Lasix and something like 11 for 61 when they run with Lasix. So a question for you, is that a concern? Is that much of a factor in your handicapping, or is it just, you don't necessarily upgrade or downgrade, more or less it's just maybe the way it's worked out in recent years?
You know what, Mike? It's a consideration, and it's a element of conversation. But there are many factors in the whole sport of horse racing that I find very difficult to quantify. Including the addition or removal of Lasix, including track surface or turf course surface. Could the soft turf course affect the grass races this weekend at Keeneland? Yeah, they could. How do you quantify it going in? I really don't know. And when there's an element like the condition of the course or additional removal of Lasix that I cannot quantify, then I'm going to just kind of file it off to the side and be aware of it, but I'm not going to let it influence my handicapping. So that's kind of a long-winded non-answer by saying that it's something to consider, but I don't know how to consider it, so therefore I will not.
No, that's a good answer and an honest one. And you also mentioned the condition of the turf course. I think the rain has stopped in Lexington, but there was certainly a lot of it over the last day or two. And very likely the ground for tomorrow, I think the one turf race for today has been moved to the main track. And very likely, even though it might dry out, the turf course tomorrow and probably even into Saturday will be less than firm. And you mentioned that's something harder to quantify as well, but are there certain types of horses that you may look to upgrade or downgrade with that softer than firm turf? Or is it just one of those things where, especially with 2-year-olds and especially where you don't necessarily have a body of work on different types of surfaces, you keep it in mind, but you don't use it as a major factor?
Yeah, there definitely are certain types of running styles and certain types of horses that I will downgrade due to the condition of the course. One of those being obviously in the Breeders' Cup Mile on Saturday. I mean, he's a very fast horse out in California, and his best race is good enough to be a contender, but I believe, I'm watching this horse run for the last couple of years out in California, that he likes it hard and fast. He likes to rock and roll early, use his speed, and run them off their feet, kind of like a dirt horse, only he runs on grass. And I think the same thing might apply even in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, which is race 8 on Friday, with a very fast sprinter by the name of Ruby Notion. She's by Great Notion, and she's done nothing but sprint in her 4 first 4 starts, 3 wins. She's got some big numbers, but she's going to be going long for the first time over a turf course that we expect to be something short of fast. If it was hard, firm, fast, 80 degrees at Keeneland and a quick turf course, I might want to take a second look at Ruby Notion. However, with the likelihood of a slower, wetter turf course that might not carry speed, and I emphasize the word might because I really don't know for sure, I think that Ruby Notion, and obviously those are a couple of kamikaze front runners that might be compromised by the condition of the turf course. All
right. Well, that's good information, and let's actually move on to the next race on tomorrow's card. It's the 7th race. It's the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, and we talked a little bit about pace in the turf races. This is certainly a race where you've got one horse. He's even money on the morning line. He seems to be the fastest early. He seems to be the fastest late. He seems to be simply the best horse in the field in nearly any way you might make that assessment. Do you see Liam's Map as just a stone single, or do you see potentially a vulnerable favorite at a short price?
Well, let's just put it this way. I'm not interested in betting Liam's Map at even money. And in fact, as of early this week or over the weekend, I had actually planned to pick against Liam's Map because Appealing Tail, a very fast California-based miler, I was under the impression that he was going to be in this race and take the lead from Liam's Map. For Liam's Map to win the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, I thought he would have to sit second, and maybe he would have been good enough to do that. But when Appealing Tail was injured in a workout over the weekend, he did not even enter the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. It really softened the pace scenario considerably. And yes, there are some horses in here with tactical speed. Braidster has speed. Mr. Z is going to show a little bit of gas part way, and Ballad. But the pace scenario of the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile really became a whole lot softer with the defection of Appealing Tail, with Private Zone opting to go into the Breeders' Cup Sprint as opposed to trying to stretch his speed. So it really kind of plays into the hand of Liam's Map. Now, do I think he's a stone cinch at even money? No, I really don't. I mean, he's a fast horse, and I expect him to run well, and I kind of expect him to win. But to me, there's enough possible. I don't know if vulnerable is the right word, but I don't think he's as big a cinch as the favorite that we're going to be another favorite we'll be talking about that runs in the first Breeders' Cup race on Saturday. When you go back through Liam's Map's past performances, okay, he coasted on the front end in the Woodward. In my opinion, his second place finish in the Whitney was the best race of his career because he went very fast early, opened up, right, got late, and got collared. Then before that, those were his only 2 graded stakes wins or graded stakes efforts. You look back, and he defeated Ballad by only a half length. That was in December at Gulfstream Park. Well, Ballad is in this race. Ballad has speed. He'll be forwardly placed, and he'll be in the right spot to give Liam's Map some company up on the front end. As I said, Mike, I think Liam's Map is the best horse in the field. That's no secret. He's the even money favorite. I don't think that he is a great gamble at that price. And if he got beat, I would not be at all surprised. But the softening of the pace scenario made it a whole lot easier. One horse in here that I am looking at possibly betting, and it's my second selection, and that's number 5, Lee. He was originally targeted for the Breeders' Cup Mile on grass, but trainer Bill Mott pulled an audible when the weather came up a little bit wet, and it looked like the turf course was going to be soft. So Lee was redirected into the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Well, he's a pretty doggone good horse on the main track. I mean, his last you have to throw out his Saratoga race, but his runner-up finish in the Foster was terrific. He ran super last year in the Dawn. He won the Howell's Hope. He won the Dawn in 2014. This is a horse that can do any sort of surface, grass or dirt, and I think he has at least enough tactical speed to keep the front runners in his sights. And if a horse like Ballad or Braidster or Mr. Z goes with Liam's Map early and softens him up, maybe Lee can be in the right spot to pounce. But once again, the odds are going to dictate my play in this race. I'm not interested in backing Lee anything less than his morning line, which is 8-1. And once again, I expect that Liam's Map is going to run very well in the dirt mile.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think he'll run a big race, but I'm also with you in hoping that somebody goes early, and just makes it a little tough on him because at a short price, he's one that I might look to beat as well. Because I think there's a number of runners in here that have some early speed, and even a horse like Mr. Z, who his best races have come on the front end. I don't see a possible scenario where he even hits the board if he lets Lee or any other horse get to the lead early. So I would imagine Joe Bravo at 50-1 is going to have to gun it from out of the gate, and you know, might make Liam's Map and Javier Castellano have to make some decisions, and maybe it does set it up for one to come off the pace. Or at least that's my hope.
Yeah, the run into the first turn is going to be crucial for Liam's Map, and maybe somebody else goes, Mr. Z goes, and Liam's Map gets to the outside and is comfortable sitting second. And he's done that before. He did win the Harlan's Holiday in December at Gulfstream Park from a second place position. He broke his maiden from third. Those were a little bit softer company that he's running against on Friday in the dirt mile, but sitting second and winning a race would not be something new for Liam's Map. He's even money. He should win. I'm not going to bet him. I might bet somebody else in the field.
I like it. Okay, let's move on to the next race. We mentioned the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. You mentioned briefly that there's a horse that you expect to get the lead early. That's number 5, Ruby Notion, stretching out from 3 very fast sprint efforts. What's your take? Even though they're taking blinkers off, I don't disagree that she's on the lead early and maybe makes it tough for some of these ones, including Catch a Glimpse, who, at least in the North American runners, has run the fastest race from a Beyer speed figure perspective. Where did you go in the Juvenile Fillies Turf, and how do you see this race playing out?
Well, I agree. I think the Ruby Notion is simply the fastest horse in the field, and I think that she'll take the lead and she'll run as far as she can, as fast as she can. And as I said earlier, if this race was run on a firm, fast turf course where they were doing miles in 32 and change or 33, I'd give her a big look. But over a wet turf course that's going to be playing, we expect, a little bit on the slow side, I think that Ruby Notion might be up against it trying to stretch her speed. She's never gone beyond 5.5 furlongs, and that was on a sloppy track at Laurel. She ran fast. She won by 8 lengths. She got a decent number, and, she'll take this field as far as she can. Mike, you mentioned a horse that it's really the only horse on the Friday Breeders' Cup races that I'm interested in wagering on, and that's number 4, Catch a Glimpse. And here's why I like her. Yes, she won an allowance race setting the pace at Woodbine, and then she got to crawl on the lead last time out in the Grade 2 in the Talma. She won't get that trip on Friday because Ruby Notion is a quicker filly than Catch a Glimpse. But watching the video of Catch a Glimpse, I do not think that this filly has to have the lead. I believe that she can ration her speed, and I think that she can sit second or third, wherever she needs to be. I think this is a good filly on her way up. She can ration her speed by herself. The question is, can she ration her speed chasing somebody, sitting comfortably behind somebody? If she does, if she can just let Ruby Notion go and pretend that Ruby Notion is not even in the race, I think the Catch a Glimpse is a terrific wager at 5-1. Her win in the Talma was huge. I mean, she won by 5. She had something left at the wire. The runner-up came back and won a graded stakes race. And the Talma, or I should say the 2-year-old grass races at Woodbine in fall, the form of those races, surprisingly, has translated quite well into the United States Graded Stakes Company. I say surprisingly because Woodbine is really, the class of the horses that race at Woodbine is nowhere close to the class of the races that are run in the United States, the exception being the grass races, and particularly the 2-year-old races. The Summer Stakes has been productive for 2-year-old colts and geldings, and then the Talma as well for fillies and mares, or fillies, I should say. Catch a Glimpse, if she can sit second, and that's the key of the race, then I think that she's a good bet at 5-1. I loved her win. It was validated, and I think that Catch a Glimpse is a good play at odds of 5-1, and I certainly respect Harmonize, who she should not have won the Jessamine last time out at Keeneland. This is a filly whose first two starts were on or near the front end, and she kind of broke slowly and lost position in the Jessamine, lost a ton of ground into the lane, Harmonize did, and she somehow won the race, defeating Sapphire Kitten. That was an impressive win by a daughter of Scat Daddy, who is very, very good right now for trainer Bill Mott. Her numbers are improving, 82 to 80. I guess you could say they're static, but her number dropped because her trip was such a horrible trip, very, very wide into the lane. So, I have nothing but respect for Harmonize. There's a lot of contenders in these races and horses that we're not even going to get a chance to talk about because it's the Breeders' Cup and these fields are deep. I saw a very interesting tweet, not to digress too much, but this was from Kevin Modesti. He counted the number of Grade 1 winners in the Breeders' Cup that are listed at 10 to 1 or higher. How about 23 Grade 1 winners whose odds are 10 to 1 or higher on the morning line? And that's the beauty of the Breeders' Cup. You get good horses at good prices, and there are plenty of good horses in all these races, including the Juvenile Fillies Turf. And Harmonize might be the best filly in the field, but I really like Catch a Glimpse with a sitting second or third, and I think that she is a good filly on her way up. And plus, I got to admit, I'm biased toward Progeny of Cities. I think he's a fantastic sire, and when I see a good one, like they had to Spa last year, she wasn't supposed to be able to get the distance in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, and she did just that. So I like Catch a Glimpse in the Juvenile Fillies Turf. That's the one horse on Friday that I'm really looking forward to playing.
Well, I have a nice stat that you're going to like then for Marcassi runners, 2-year-old runners in turf-graded stakes. Since the start of last year, he's run them in 10 different races. He's had 14 different runners because he's cross-entered 4 times, where he actually had 4 of his horses get beat by his own horses. He's won 7 of the 10 juvenile turf races he's entered since the start of 2014. Yeah, $9.93 ROI. Of course, that includes catch a glimpse at nearly 9 to 1 in the Natalma. But he's just, everybody talks about Chad Brown, and for very good reason. He's had a lot of real amazing success in recent years with turf-graded stakes horses. But it seems almost a little under the radar how well Cassie has done with these juveniles on turf.
That's amazing. That's a heck of a stat, and I'm not surprised because Mark Cassie is a top trainer. I also caught a little. There was an item in one of Jay Huffy's columns early this week. He talked to the owner of Catch a Glimpse, I believe it was Gary Barber, and I don't usually typically use owner quotes in my handicapping equation, but Gary Barber said something in Huffy's column, and he mentioned that he believes, and Mark Cassie believes, that Catch a Glimpse has come on since her win in the Natalma. So if she's doing better going into the Breeders' Cup than she was in the Natalma, look out. This could be very, very fun to watch. Yeah,
it'll be interesting, and it's a very interesting race. And I'm also curious to see where the wagering money goes, because you've got, in addition to those two, I think, who probably lead it from the North American contingent, you've got a few decent-looking Europeans coming over for some top trainers, and I'm just curious to see who takes money and how the race plays out.
Yeah, so am I. Here's another interesting thing regarding the Juvenile Fillies Turf. I am surprised, and maybe Marcus Hurst can shed some light on this, but why the top 2-year-old fillies do not seem to support this race as much as as the 2-year-old Colts and Geldings in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. There were 3 Breeders' Cup win and you're in races in Europe this year. None of those 3 winners even bothered to show up. It was an all-expense-paid trip, and none of them showed up, Minding, Promising Run, or Ballydoyle. So I'm just curious what the difference is between fillies and colts, but this is not a race, the Juvenile Fillies Turf, that is historically won by shippers from Europe, whereas the Juvenile Turf for colts and geldings is the exact opposite, and you see it year in and year out. The colts and geldings come over, they knock out the Juvenile Turf, but you don't see it very often in the Juvenile Fillies Turf. Maybe this year will be an exception. You have Alice Springs. She's a good filly. Illuminate. She's great Group 1 placed. She's never run a bad race in 4 starts, and she's one of the favorites on the morning line, 9 to 2, number 10, Illuminate. I'm not sure how far she wants to run, but it just strikes me as surprising that the Europeans' fillies don't support the Breeders' Cup races as much as the Colts and Geldings seem to do.
That's an interesting point. I'll be sure to mention that to Marcus in the webinar that I have with him this afternoon. So maybe I'll have an answer for you. All right, let's move on to the last Breeders' Cup race on tomorrow's card. Of course, that's the Breeders' Cup Distaff. We already have had one scratch from it, which of course is last year's defending champion Untappable, unfortunately out. But still a very full field and still a very wide open race. What's your opinion on the Distaff?
Well, first of all, this is a very interesting race. I mean, there are so many ways to go in this field. There are very few throwouts. It's an evenly matched field. I made the morning line favorite, Sheer Drama. Mike Battaglia made it Wedding Toast. They're both Grade 1 winners at the top of their game, but there are a lot of different ways to go. You mentioned the scratch of Untappable, and that allows number 15, Peace and War, to get into the race. I wish I had a strong take on this race. I wish there was a long shot in here that I loved, because if there was, you're going to get paid off. Maybe Yahila at 20-1 is worth a look. I mean, she ran super last time out in the Spinster. She got beat a neck at odds of 20-1, and she's posted back-to-back bullet workouts since then. She's not a filly that, always runs two alike, but she can run two alike. And if she does move forward off the Spinster, Yahila at 20-1 is very, very tempting. I prefer Sheer Drama because I think she's the most established filly in the race. She's a 5-year-old mare. She has enough tactical speed to overcome that outside post position. She'll be breaking from post number 13. She's number 14 in the program. But trainer David Fox has done an outstanding job with this 5-year-old mare. And she used to get on. I talked to Fox a couple weeks ago, and trying to kind of getting him to explain the improvement for Sheer Drama over her earlier part of her career. She used to get very worked up and wound up, and everything was just an adventure with her. As she's gotten older, as she's matured and grown older, she has learned to kind of calm her nerves down a little bit. She doesn't get as worked up as she did early on. Jockey Joe Bravo is riding her with a ton of confidence. She comes in off back-to-back wins, and in the Personal Ensign, she got a perfect trip, sitting third behind the speed, took care of business, and ran away. And that race has already been validated when Got Lucky came back and won the Spinster. Her Delaware win 2 starts back was validated by Frivolous. So she's beating good field. She's a Grade 1 winner in top form, and I expect her to run her race. This 2-month break has been by design, and I think that she should be able to drop in from the outside post and get a good trip. Wedding Toast, I'm not sure how much action she's going to take. Battaglia makes her the morning line favorite. I made her second choice. She's got back-to-back giant speed figures that are just leaping off the page and begging bettors to wager on Wedding Toast. She earned a 103 buyer last time out in the Beldame. That was not a fluke. She earned a 102 2 starts back in the Grade 1 Auction Tips. Now, both those races were not bona fide route races. They were run at Belmont Park, a mile and 16th, a mile and 1/8. And in her comeback race, she benefited from a racetrack that seemed to favor speed. Nobody went with her, and she won as easily as a 2 3/4 length winner can win. She had a ton left at the wire. She also had circumstances made to order, and I don't think she's going to get that same trip on Friday in the Distaff. Stop Charging Maria has speed. My Sweet Addiction has a little bit of speed. Yahila will be forwardly placed. Stellar Wind is fresh. She might be more close to the pace than normal. This is a very interesting race in that I'm not sure that Wedding Toast is going to get the same soft, easy front-running trip that she got winning the Beldame. Maybe it won't matter. Maybe it'll be like Catch a Glimpse in the Juvenile Fillies Turf, and maybe Wedding Toast will sit second or third if she needs to and just take care of business that way. She's the fastest horse in the race on numbers, Wedding Toast is. The question is, how does the race flow affect her chances? And I think it's possible that it might affect her in a negative way, whereas I'm not too concerned about the race flow with regards to Sheer Drama, even though the outside post does her no favors.
Right. Yeah, you bring up a very good point about the way she won those last two, and there's a lot of speed in here because you didn't mention even the horse that I think might very well be on the lead, which is number 5 Calamity Kate at a big price. She may very well be the fastest early. Yeah, it's going to have to make Jose Lezcano make some decisions about how he rides Wedding Toast. But boy, if you follow the Beyer speed figures, not only has she run those two big figures, but she's the only one in the field to run at least 100 on the Beyer speed figure scale, and she's done it 3 times. So if she runs her race, from the numbers, she should be best. But I'm kind of with you. I think from a race flow standpoint, she might be up against it a little bit.
Yeah, I think she might be up against it. And this is another race where, as far as wagering goes, I'm not really planning on making a play in this race unless Yahila slips through the cracks, or if Sheer Drama floats up to 7 or 8 to 1 for some crazy reason. A lot of these Breeders' Cup races, you do your handicap and you know who you like, who you're leaning toward, but then you look out on the board at 10 minutes to post and you go, why is this horse such a big price? It happened once to me a year ago, and it was in the Breeders' Cup Mile, and Caraconte, who I thought was a contender, and then he went and threw the far outside post. I thought, well, there's no way this horse is going to win. But at 10 minutes to post, he was getting no play whatsoever and ended up going off at 30 to 1. So it was one of those races where the odds dictated a play, and that might be the case in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. I expect Sheer Drama to run well. She's my top pick. I expect Wedding Toast to run well. She's my second selection. But if there is an aberration somewhere out there on the tote board, a la Yahila at 20 to 1, well, that's where I'll be going.
Sounds good. All right, let's move on to Saturday. We've got a lot of races to cover there. Of course, 9 Breeders' Cup races, 12 races in total. You mentioned kind of a little earlier that there's a really legitimate favorite that you're not looking to beat in the first of the Breeders' Cup races on Saturday. I'm sure you mean number 10, Songbird in the Juvenile Fillies.
I'll be surprised if Songbird loses the Juvenile Fillies. There's no such thing as a slam dunk in horse racing, but Songbird comes awfully close to it. She's the 7 to 5 favorite. I won't be surprised if her odds go even shorter than that. 3 for 3 in California. She can stretch her speed. The fractions that she set in the Grade 1 Chanticleer were lightning fast for that racetrack and that class level. She drew outside. That's fine with me. Mike Smith has options. She can go to the lead or she can sit second. I think Songbird, she's the proverbial slam dunk. This is not a horse that I'm going to bet on straight, but I will be singling her in the early pick 5, and I'm not even going to use any backups. If Songbird loses the Juvenile Fillies, my pick 5 ticket is dead. I think that she's a good filly on her way up, and I expect her to win the Juvenile Fillies at a short price.
All right. Well, sounds good. Let me ask you this. So those looking still to play the race and take your advice, because I'm kind of the same opinion. The only potential concern I have is the post, but I'm not, in a 10-horse field, I'm less concerned than if it were, say, a larger field like we have in the Juvenile. But even still, if somebody wants to take your opinion, they want to play her on top in the tries and the supers potentially. Are there any other opinions you have about horses that may very well outrun their odds, or on the other side, one's second, third choices that you think may be vulnerable to not hit the board?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's another thing that you need to address going in. How are you going to bet these races? I'm not going to bet Songbird straight, but there are a couple of long shot come from behinders that I give a look to perhaps hit the board. If Songbird goes out, sets the pace, runs fast, she could conceivably take care of the other speed horses in the field. Horses like Nickname and Forever Darling, and there's another contender, Rachel's Valentine. These are all forwardly placed runners, but if Songbird runs them off their feet and goes on and wins the race, why can't one of these come from behind, clunk up long shots come along to complete the exact? And there are actually 2 of them that I kind of like. One of them is 30 to 1, number 3, Right There, who has really had the flow of the race working against her in all her recent starts this summer in California at Del Mar and at Santa Anita. Pretty and Cool, when Right There finished 4th in the Grade 2 Sorrento, Pretty and Cool went out there and just took care of business on the front end. And then Right There chased Songbird in the Del Mar Debutante and the Chandelier. Songbird won both those races in wire-to-wire fashion. Right There kind of just ran around the track. Well, she's adding blinkers on Saturday, and trainer Keith DeSormo has really made an impact out here in California. He moved his operation out here approximately a year ago. He won the Juvenile a year ago with Texas Red. And this is a guy who doesn't put horses in races that they can't win. He's been high on Right There from the time she made her career debut. She actually broke her maiden in a stakes race second time out. And I think that maybe we haven't seen the best of Right There. She should be a little bit closer to the pace with the blinkers on. And I know that she can pass horses in the lane. So she's a 30-1 crazy horse that could come along and pick up the pieces. And the other long shot, if you want to call 10-1 a long shot that I'm kind of looking at, is number 8, Dothraki Queen, trained by Kim McPeak. Kim McPeak has yet to win a Breeders' Cup race, but man, he's come close, and he's putting live shooters out there. And Dothraki Queen, she's good. She won her first 2 starts. She won on grass at Ellis. She won the Pocahontas, and then she finished second last time out at Tagomo on a sloppy track at Keeneland. That was an okay race. Is she as good as some of the elite in the juvenile fillies? Probably not, but her running style is completely opposite the favorite, which is fine with me because she can just be in a different race altogether, come along, pick up the pieces, and maybe finish second. So to answer your question, Mike, Songbird over a couple long shots in the exacta. Number 3 Right There, and number 8 Dothraki Queen.
I absolutely like your thinking there, and on some of these other webinars, both Byron King and Randy Moss talked about how a track like Keeneland and the new dirt surface is not nearly as speed favoring as a track like Santa Anita would be, or even Del Mar for that matter. And so a horse like Right There, who maybe seems to be up against it in those surfaces, might have a better shot to close into a pace at Keeneland. So I like that thinking, and I'm kind of looking to do the same in terms of beating Rachel's Valentina and Nickname on in the tries and the supers.
Right.
All right, let's move on to the 4th race on Saturday. It's the second Breeders' Cup race of the day. It's the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. And Brad, this is, of all the Breeders' Cup races, this is the one I had the hardest time getting my head around and the hardest time picking a winner. And my approach ultimately is going to be, if I play this race at all in multi-race wagers, spread as much as I possibly can afford to and just hope for the biggest price. Where did you go in here?
Yeah, well, that's a big club of people who've been baffled by the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, because I'm a member of that as well. Yeah, I had a lot of trouble in this race. I think most handicappers probably did, and I ultimately settled on a horse that is down on the inside, number 1 Pure Sensation, who is 3 for 3 in turf sprints. His numbers are good. He is quick enough to establish a forward position from the inside post, I hope, because if he gets shuffled back, it's not going to work out real well for him. This is a grass race, so I don't know how boggy the turf course will be. We can see that he has won on firm. He has also won on good. So I don't know if the condition of the turf course is going to be that big of a factor. However, even when he won on that good turf course at Saratoga, the course was pretty quick that day. I mean, the track variant was only 7. So Pure Sensation is my top selection. I think he's fast, he's good, he's sharp, he's in the right hands. I don't have a strong take in this race. I happen to come up with a 6-1 shot as my top choice. I respect Lady Shipman, fast 3-year-old filly who might be the speed of the speed. No Silence. His numbers out in California are not that great, but boy, this horse is really good right now. Number 9, No Silence. I mean, he won his comeback in a $50,000 claiming race, but he did it in better than looked fashion. It was a neck win over a back class horse by the name of Chips All In, and then he came right back a month later and won again in a 2 other than, and then he jumped up to a grade 3 and won the Eddie D. So this horse is really good right now for Gary Mandela. He's a well-bred gelding. In fact, he did not get good until he was gelded, and that was sometime after his April race at Shakertown. It might have been after the September race, September 2014 at Del Mar. But Gary Mandela had him gelded, and No Silence is on a roll right now. Is he good enough? Maybe not, but boy, his odds sure are big. 15-1 on the morning line. And No Silence, if you want to gamble and have him hit the board, he might be a one to look at. But I took Pure Sensation in a race that I really don't have anything smart or intelligent to add.
Well, I'm kind of right there with you. For me, the strongest opinion I have in the race is at a short price. I'm gonna go against Lady Shipman and have her try and beat me. She's a fantastic filly. She's had a fantastic year, but my concern is, as a 3-year-old and as a filly facing older and facing males for the first time in her career, after a long year, this will be her 10th race of 2015, at a very short price. She drifted out last time. That's often a sign of a horse that's maybe not going in the right direction. I'm thinking she might be up against it here, and if she indeed goes off as the favorite, I'm going to look to find value elsewhere.
Yeah, watching the tape of her last race, I mean, she really gave it up. She drifted out. She gave it up in her 9th start, and boy, there's a ton of speed in this field. I mean, Pure Sensation has speed, and several others to the outside ready for Rice, Deck, Mongolian Saturday. The front end could be very, very crowded. Here comes Bobby's Kitten again.
That was my pick. That was actually absolutely my pick for the DRF staff pick. So, but it was a very tepid one at that.
Hey, that doesn't matter. He got there.
Yep. All right. I'll move to the 5th race at Keeneland. It's the Filly and Mare Sprint. Another wide open race. Another race that's loaded with early speed. A full field here, and your favorite is drawn to the outside. It's another 3-year-old facing older and cavorting. Do you think the race sets up perfectly for her, or did you go elsewhere with your pick in the Filly and Mare Sprint?
Well, I think the race does set up well for cavorting. The pace should be legitimate, and if she runs her race, she can win. You know, sometimes I think that handicappers can be guilty of getting too bogged down in stats, whether they be trainer stats or trends. But sometimes a trend just jumps out and it cannot be ignored. And I think that might be one reason for cavorting to at least be considered possibly vulnerable. There have been 24 3-year-olds that have run in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. None of them have won, and 4 beaten favorites have in fact been 3-year-olds. La Traviata in 2007, Indian Blessing, Champagne d'Oro, and Turbulent Descent. All 4 favorites, 3-year-olds, and none of them won. So cavorting is bucking a historical trend that I think is challenging, and I think maybe there's something to it. Maybe the class jump from racing against 3-year-olds, which is all cavorting has done so far, into older fillies and mares, maybe that hurdle is a lot more challenging than it appears. If cavorting runs her race, she can win this race. I mean, her win in the Prioris was terrific. So was her win in the test, and she gets a good race flow, but it's that negative statistic regarding 3-year-olds is one reason why I kind of went shopping around for a price in this race. And at 7 furlongs is a distance that I consider one of those specialty distances. It's a tough distance at which to win. You have to have speed. You have to be able to carry your speed. And there's nobody in this field with a better record at 7 furlongs than a 10-1 shot, number 2, Dame Dorothy. 5 starts at 7 furlongs. 4 of them are wins, including a Grade 1 win, in May at Churchill Downs in the Grade 1 Humana Distaff. That's one of the top sprints of the year for fillies and mares in spring. Now, Dame Dorothy, she ran a stinker on August 29th in the Grade 1 Ballerina, and trainer Todd Pletcher had no answers whatsoever. It looked like maybe she just wasn't the filly she was early in the year. He called it a head scratcher. Well, she came back a month later in the Grade 2 Gallant Bloom, and even though she finished 3rd by 2 lengths behind La Verdad, this was a very good race. If you watch it on tape, she didn't break real well from the inside, and she kind of got bottled up down on the rail behind a very slow opening quarter, a relatively slow opening quarter, 22-3, and she was really never comfortable. She finished evenly in a race that I consider to be kind of sneaky good. It was a move forward from her disappointing effort in the Ballerina. This is her 3rd start back from a layoff. She's stretching out to a distance that we know she loves. She has tactical speed, but she doesn't need the lead, so she should be able to sit a good trip right behind the pace. And you're right about the pace scenario. They're going to be flying early with Stonetastic, La Verdad, Super Majesty. Dame Dorothy potentially could get a great trip sitting 4th, 5th, 6th, right behind the speed, and maybe she gets the jump on boarding. And at 10-1, I'll be backing Dame Dorothy to post an upset in the Filly Mare Sprint.
Well, I like where you're going with this because I'm also thinking that a horse can come off the pace, and I picked the long layoff horse in the field who's making her first start since this very race last year, which was number 5, Artemis Agritera. And she's one of those ones you mentioned as a 3-year-old that did not win in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf Sprint last year at odds of 9-2. Now you're getting her at 4, maybe 5 times that price here. She, to me, looks like the same kind of horse as what Cavorting is now, and has beaten some legitimate players like La Verdad at very short odds last time. So I'm just hoping the layoff is no concern and you get a nice run from her, because I think that there's a lot of different ways you can go here, and I don't want to take anybody at a short price.
Yeah, 20-1 is a big enough price. And as far as the layoff goes, when it comes to Breeders' Cup Sprint races, I don't even worry about the layoff. And that's a very interesting horse, Artemis Agritera. Her best races are good enough, Mike, and we know that she also likes 7 furlongs, 2 for 3 at the distance.
This will be her 3rd consecutive year running in the Breeders' Cup. You know,
3rd time the charm.
3rd time is the charm. Let's hope. All right, let's move on to the 6th race Saturday. That's the Filly and Mare Turf. Another very interesting race. It's the first time it's been run at 1 mile and 3/16 due to Keeneland's layout. Some good North American horses, but also some good ones coming from overseas. Where did you land in this one?
You know, I took the favorite, number 3, Legatissimo. I mean, she is very, very good right now overseas for trainer David Walkman. Her last 2 wins have been in Group 1 company, and she just dusted the field both times. I don't have a lot of creativity in here, but there is one thing that I'm a little bit concerned about with Legatissimo, and that is this. David Walkman repeatedly overseas, in reading some of the reports from the European media, said that Legatissimo is not the type of filly that wants a lot of give in the ground. You look at her most recent start and you go, well, shoot, she won on soft. It wasn't the type of soft that was a boggy type of soft. It wasn't as bad as other soft horses are. But Walkman has said many times, Legatissimo prefers a firm, fast ground, and that's what he was kind of hoping to get for the Filly Mare Turf in the U.S. in late October. Well, as it turns out, he might not get the type of ground that he prefers or that she prefers. Legatissimo, I still think she's the best horse in the race. I expect her to win. If the ground is soft and if she doesn't like it, then it becomes an absolute crapshoot. I don't know where to go. I picked Decida for my second selection. She was a top-class filly in South America. Her U.S. debut was impressive, but it was at 1 mile and 1/16, and sometimes these blast-home miler types don't always reproduce their form when they stretch out. So she's stretching out another 1/8 of a mile, which doesn't seem like a whole lot, but sometimes it can be. Decida is good. I mean, she's 10 starts into her career with 7 wins. North American form, Group 1 winning form in South America. She's 8-1. I think that she has a chance, but you couldn't talk me off of anybody in a wide open scramble. Legatissimo is the horse to beat. Decida is my second selection.
All right. I'm kind of with you. This is a wide open one. I really took number 6, Queen's Jewel, for Freddie Head, who knows how to win Breeders' Cup races, and I'm just hoping after those last 2 clunkers, he thinks maybe she bled, maybe the Lasix will do the trick after those nice 3 starts to start her career, and then as the post-time favorite in the last 2 against a lot of other quality fillies in Group 1s over there. I'm just hoping she has a turnaround run at a nice price, and we'll see. But I'm kind of with you. I think Legatissimo is the best horse in the race, but still there could be a chance for a price in this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's go to the BC Sprint, the 7th race. we have what could be the fastest horse in the world in here. At least Track has said that Run Happy's, he ran an eighth, a middle split in the Phoenix last out. That was the fastest eighth of a mile they've ever tracked in any of the races since they started in 2011. He's seemingly an improving horse that could be any kind. Do you see him as just a super freak that's going to run away from this field, or do you see him as vulnerable, a horse that sometimes breaks slowly and now is facing the toughest field he's ever seen?
Well, I see Run Happy as undoubtedly the horse to beat. And with all due respect to Private Zone, who happens to be the morning line favorite, I think that Run Happy is relatively solid as you can get at 3-1 in a Breeders' Cup sprint race with a 14-horse field. This is a fast son of a gun. I've been following this horse ever since last December at Turfway Park. Mm-hmm. If you get a chance, any viewers out there, go back and take a look at his debut, because it was wild. I mean, he broke awful, he raced greenly, and he just crushed the field. They tried to do a little bit too much too soon, threw him out on the Triple Crown Trail, and it didn't work out. But since bringing him back in summer and letting him do what he wants to do, and that's be a sprinter, this guy has gone from strength to strength. Allowance, grade 1 over 3-year-olds, and his most recent start at Keeneland was terrific. He did not break well at all from the rail. Rushed up inside, uncorked that huge turn of middle speed, and just ran away from the field. I wanted to try to be creative and pick up a 10-1 shot somewhere, but I couldn't get past this fast horse. Run Happy, I think, is the horse to beat in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. He's sharp, he's good. He's also 3-1, so you're not getting a whole lot of value. If the race should fall apart, I think that number 8, Wild Dude, a shipper from California who is a 6-furlong specialist, and he runs well when the pace is quick. He lags back and blasts home, just like he did in his last 2 grade 1 6-furlong races in California. Nowhere close early, but he's first crossing the wire. This is a good horse in good hands. Hollendorfer trains, Bejarano rides, and Wild Dude, he'll get pace to run at. I don't think he is quite as good as some of the East Coast sprinters, but I know he will be finishing. And at 10-1 in a race that has to unfold at a quick pace, I think that Wild Dude is at least worth consideration. But again, Run Happy is my top selection, and I think that this is kind of a freaky fast type of 3-year-old colt.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think he's probably your most likely winner, but maybe one, if he gets much shorter than that 3-1, maybe one that doesn't just offer too much value on Saturday. All right, let's go to the 8th race on the card. That, of course, is the Breeders' Cup Mile. It's also the start of the all Breeders' Cup Pick 4 that ends with the Classic. What was your take on the mile?
Well, I went price shopping here, and I took a look at some video from overseas, and make believe his win last time out in a Group 1 was very impressive. I mean, he was confidently ridden every step of the way. The rider shook him up, and he took care of business. He's a good horse in good form, an improving 3-year-old who defeated Older last time out. And if you like the morning line favorite, make believe, you know what, there's no knocks at all on him other than price. But I was equally impressed with a 3-year-old filly, number 5, Impassable, whose last 2 starts were a whole lot better than they look on paper. You go, she won a Group 2 by 3/4, and then she came back and won another Group 2 by a half length. This filly has a devastating turn of late speed. She's getting better as the year has progressed. And no, she's not quite Group 1 caliber yet, but there's nothing better in racing than betting on an improving horse, taking a very challenging hike up in class, and getting paid if you're right. Impassable is 8-1 on the morning line. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see her odds drift up to double digits. I think we haven't seen the best of this 3-year-old filly yet, and I'm looking for Impassable to run a big race in the Breeders' Cup Mile and maybe spring an upset, and I'm hoping that her odds go a little bit higher. But I respect Make Believe, but Impassable is my top selection.
All right, I'm not that far off from you in terms of, I think the Europeans kind of have the upper hand in this race. I'm going to ask you about a horse you mentioned earlier in the webinar who won this race last year, and you said you bet that day, Caraconte, here to try and defend his title. Seemingly coming into the race, granted he's only had 2 starts this year, but he's run faster certainly than, at least on the Racing Post numbers, faster than he had coming into the race last year. Do you give him a puncher's chance at 12-1 on the morning line to repeat?
Yeah, I certainly do. And this is a race that we've seen, many horses have come back and repeat. The repeat winners would not be anything new. And Caraconte's form this year is actually not too bad. I mean, that third last time out being 2 lengths in a Group 1 in Longchamp was not a bad race. The target all season long has been the Breeders' Cup Mile. And you know what? You could even argue that his form is a little bit better this year than it was last year. Last year he had 4 starts going into the Breeders' Cup. This year only 2. But he's a year older, and he has a big look in this race. He won't be 30-1 this time around, however.
That's true. But anything 10, 12 in that range is certainly square on your defending winner. So, do you, in general, in this race, see this one as one where the Europeans really hold the upper hand against the Americans, or do you give any of the Americans a shot?
The only American I really give a shot to is the 4-year-old filly Tepin, whose win in the First Lady was, you don't see horses win by 7 lengths on grass. Right. Maybe the soft course had a little something to do with it. Sometimes when the conditions are a little bit wet or unfavorable, the field tends to get strung out. But a 7-length win in a Grade 1 mile, that was impressive. The time was fast. She's moving up in class to face Open Company, but it's Mark Cassie and a filly who has a win over the course. She's really the only American in this field that I wouldn't be surprised to see her win. But I kind of do lean toward the Europeans.
Yeah, no, I agree. When I saw her win that day, little shades of English Channel's win in the Breeders' Cup,
right.
Where it's like she's running a completely different race from the rest of the field. All right, let's go on to the 9th race on Saturday. It's the Juvenile for Colts and Geldings. This one, unlike the one for the Fillies, has, I think, much more of a wide open feel to it. What was your take on the Juvenile?
Oh, I agree. This is one of the more perplexing handicapping challenges of the entire weekend. You can make a case for a lot of horses. There are fast horses in here. Nyquist is good from California, and I think he might be good enough to overcome that outside draw. Their Greenpoint Crusader was super impressive, winning the Grade 1 Champagne around 1 turn on a sloppy track at Belmont Park, and I think that this is a very exciting 2-year-old about ready to turn 3 next year. Number 3, Greenpoint Crusader. That win, that 4.5-length win, was a lot even better than it looks on paper. He was eliminated seemingly at the break, and he just ran away from the field. I'm not sure if maybe the mud might have moved him up a little bit, but he's good right now, and if he can stay 2 turns, and there's certainly nothing in his pedigree that would suggest he would not, he's going to be a major player, not only in this race, but hopefully next year on the road toward the Kentucky Derby. But I'm going with the guy who won this race a year ago, and his name is Keith DeSormo, and he has his brother Kent DeSormo riding, and I'm referring to number 9, Exaggerator, who has moved forward in each successive race. 5th in his debut, up to win maiden race by a nose, shipped back to New York from California, took care of business in the Grade 2 Saratoga Special, and then the question was, could he go 2 turns in the Breeders' Futurity? Yeah, he can go 2 turns all right. Kent DeSormo gave this guy a perfect ride. He kind of got stalled in traffic on the far turn and had to wait, but Exaggerator switched off, and I like it when a young horse will show the ability to switch off and take his cue from the jockey, and that's exactly what Exaggerator did. DeSormo asked him for a run. He split horses, and he probably made the lead a little too soon. It wasn't DeSormo's fault. In fact, I talked to him afterward, and he said exactly that. I think he made the lead too soon is what Kent DeSormo said, and Brody's Cause came by and ran him down. But it was a terrific runner-up finish by a colt that has moved forward each successive start. We know he can run long. He should have the jump over the horse that beat him last time out, And if he can just wait and time his move a little bit later in the race, I think Exaggerator, he's one of many in this race that are qualified to win. But at 6-1, I'm going to go in on DeSomo to make it back-to-back in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile.
All right, sounds good. I think he has a huge shot as well, and I think this is one where you could go a number of different ways. So, all right, well, we've gone a full hour, so let's wrap it up now. Actually, no, I'm just kidding. Thanks for everybody for sticking around, but we do have 2 more races to cover, and it's been a fantastic hour-plus discussion with Brad, so I want to be sure we have enough time to cover the Breeders' Cup Turf, and then, of course, the Breeders' Cup Classic. The Turf is the 10th race. It is the second-to-last Breeders' Cup on Saturday's card. You've got your shortest price, at least on the morning line, shortest price favorite of all 13 of the Breeders' Cup races in Golden Horn. Your defending winner of the ARC only about 4 weeks ago now. What's your take on this race, Golden Horn, particularly at what looms to be probably odds-on?
Yeah, he's going to be really short. If you're stuck going into the last 2 races of the Breeders' Cup, if you're having a bad weekend, you might as well just wrap up and forget about it, because I think the Golden Horn is, he kind of stands out, doesn't he? I mean, when you win the ARC, which is the Breeders' Cup Classic of Europe, you have established yourself as one of the top horses in the world. And I know that ARC winners have not run that well shipping over to the United States and running in the Breeders' Cup. But trainer John Gosden is not an idiot, and he wouldn't be coming over here just for the heck of it. This is a good, serious racehorse. I expect him to win. I think he completely overclasses this field. I expect him to run well, and I expect him to win. I'm not going to bet him at 4-5. There's only one crazy horse in the field that I'm kind of looking at, and that's number 6, Twilight Eclipse. Twilight Eclipse last time out was in the Grade 1 Turf Classic at Belmont, and I loved Big Blue Kitten that day, and I was lucky to win that race because Twilight Eclipse, in my opinion, was length's best. He got stopped badly into the stretch, nowhere to go inside. It took Rosario forever to find a clear run, and when he finally did, it was too late. The race was over. He lost by 3/4. After watching the race, I think that he could have won easily by a couple lengths. I think Twilight Eclipse has a chance to finish in front of Big Blue Kitten is my point, and Big Blue Kitten is 8-1. Twilight Eclipse is 20-1. Not too thrilled about the possibility of a wet turf course at Keeneland with either one of those two, but I think the Twilight Eclipse, his form might look a little bit murky. He is good right now, and I won't be at all surprised to see him outrun his price in a race that, again, I like the favorite to win the race, Golden Horn.
Well, we talked in the Juvenile Fillies about a legitimate favorite that you think is the most likely winner of the race, and one that you're going to be singling in multi-race wagers. So it's maybe a similar approach to what I asked you in that race. If you put that horse on top, and in this race if you put Golden Horn on top, and if there's a horse you're going to key underneath in your tries and supers, you could do worse than a runner like Twilight Eclipse, who at 20-1 has only been running in graded stakes, has been running in mostly grade 1s, and has been hit the board in 10 of his last 11 races, and has been facing the likes of Main Sequence last year, and certainly some of these other horses that have finished ahead of him that he's going to be facing on Saturday. But he's one that runs his race almost every time, can hit the board at a big price, and that's how you can create value if you're using a short price favorite on top. So I like that idea, and if I play this race from a vertical standpoint, that's the kind of approach that I'm going to be taking.
That's the approach you have to take. If you're playing tries with keying a 4-5 shot, there's really not any point in putting a 4-5 shot over a 6-1 and an 8-1. You need to find a crazy horse to hit the board to make the trifecta worthwhile. Twilight Eclipse falls into that category at 20-1.
All right, well, let's move on to the big event for Saturday, which, of course, if you're joining a little late and you missed the announcement that we mentioned at the top, got a little less exciting, and certainly the disappointing news that Beholder will be scratching from the Breeders' Cup Classic and not facing American Pharoah and the rest of the older males on Saturday. I'm sure you haven't done any. We've been on discussing it since the news broke. maybe we take a look at American Pharoah and the rest of the field with the thought in mind of, okay, who inherits that stalking position, and is there anybody that could potentially give American Pharoah any trouble on the front end in the Classic on Saturday?
Boy, I would have loved to have seen Liam's map in this race, because then, we would have had the legitimate pace and somebody to go with American Pharoah or somebody for him to stop. But there's no speed in this race other than the favorite. And American Pharoah, he should make the lead, and frankly, he should be long gone. Beholder was going to get the perfect trip, sitting second, and maybe being the one to apply pressure to American Pharoah. But with her out of the race, I guess you take a look at a horse named Smooth Roller, who I was dead set against. He won the Awesome Again last time out by more than 5 lengths with a good number, but he got the most advantageous trip imaginable, sitting second behind a slow pace, and the front runner completely fell apart, and Smooth Roller ran away from the field. My gut feeling is he is not as good as that race makes him look, but he's going to get the same trip this time because he will be, quote, setting the pace in the second flight. American Pharoah clears the field. Smooth Roller could be in front of the rest of the field. He's going to get first jump. He's been trained very strangely all week long at Keeneland, according to our reporters there. All he ever does is jog. He doesn't gallop, no workouts. He just jog every day. But trainer Victor Garcia knows what he's doing. Smooth Roller, I'm going to have to give him a second look. I don't think he's as good as that last race makes him look. I do believe that Frosted is going to run his race, but he is at the mercy of the pace scenario. He's a horse that runs best when he can lay off and come with a run. We saw what happened in the Travers when he tried to take it to American Pharoah early, and it didn't work out real well late for Frosted. Now, Frosted does have the benefit of a race in between from the Travers into the Breeders' Cup, and that's something that American Pharoah does not. American Pharoah is coming into this race off a layoff, facing older, but he's trained like a beast. He gets an advantageous pace scenario. I think that the favorite goes wire to wire and ends his outstanding career with a 9-4-11 record. I just don't see anybody in this field that can beat him.
Yeah, and especially with the scratch of Beholder, who maybe wasn't going to necessarily play the role that Frosted played in the Travers of trying to go early and make him do more work than he wanted to early in American Pharoah. But it certainly was not going to let him get too far out in front. With Beholder out, does that put late runners like Honor Code, who's now likely to be your clear second choice, and Tonalist, and even Keen Ice, who beat American Pharoah last race in the Travers, does that put those types of horses at even more of a disadvantage, and potentially now maybe much less of a chance to even hit the board or to hit the tries and the supers?
Yeah, I think it does. I think they were up against it anyway, but because those would have been two fast horses in front of them, American Pharoah and Beholder, horses with speed that can keep on running. And now there's only one of them, and American Pharoah's loose on the lead. And if you like a closer in the Breeders' Cup Classic, it's going to be very difficult unless American Pharoah should just completely fold his tent for some unknown reason and completely misfire. It could be, a parade type of race. American Pharoah takes the lead and goes gate to wire, and maybe a horse like Smooth Roller or even Frosted, who's not necessarily a deep closer. He runs from mid-pack. Maybe he's the type of horse that can, come along and at least complete the exacta. But, like I said earlier, if you're stuck going into the last two races, good luck getting out, because it kind of looks like the daily double from the turf to the Classic. It might pay all of $6 if you're lucky.
Right. Well, there is one race. We won't cover it unless you have a strong opinion about the 12th race on Saturday at Keeneland. I frankly haven't even had a chance to look at it, but
nor have I.
But thank you very much, Brad. It's been a pleasure talking to you. We went a little bit long, but I'm glad we did, because I enjoyed every minute of the conversation, and I certainly learned a few things as well, and it's always great to hear your opinion on all of these races. So thanks again for joining.
Well, Mike, thank you very much. I had an enjoyable time talking horses for the last hour and 10 minutes, and good luck to everybody on the Breeders' Cup Friday and Saturday. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks. And I'll just remind everybody you can sign up for our last webinar, which is today at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. It's with Marcus Hirsch. Just go to drf.com/webinars to click the link and register. And until then, thank you very much, and have a great Breeders' Cup.